Let's learn how to make a wedding veil with gathers which has volume at the top. First, you need to get the fabric of the desired length. If you're after a cathedral, get 3 meters of tulle and then we start shaping the tulle for your wedding veil. Now we would start shaping the tulle. We need a circular shape for the veil, so I have a tutorial that shows how to mark and pin and cut a circular shape for the veil. A circular shape is really nice compared to oval because a circular one will shape well and look better with your dress train. Next, we will smooth out the edges and the sides of the wedding veil. You need to do this on both the edges. Make sure they're nice and smooth, and also make sure that the curve is nice and smooth. Then I would fold back the fabric and cut around 10 centimeters altogether of the sides and make sure it connects well with the round cut of the wedding veil. My machine is set up as the maximum stitch length, which is 4, and just do a basic stitch using a cotton thread. We need to make sure that the thread color matches your fabric as well, all the way through from end to end at the top. To create gathers, you need to take the bobbin thread and start pulling the fabric evenly by hand. This way you can make sure that the fabric is gathered evenly. I prefer gathering the tulle by hand rather than by machine. Now we are going to create a casing or a wrap for our gathered tulle. We need to make sure that the width of the casing is same as the width of the comb. So cut out a rectangular piece from your scrap tool. If you need a detailed video just on this part, please comment and I will make sure to have a detailed video on how to make the casing, but it is very simple. Next, I would just place the casing on top of my gathered tulle and stitch it together. I need to make sure that the gathered fabric and the width of the casing is the same as the comb, and then I would just do a regular stitch. The stitch length here would be 2.5. That way you are making sure that it's nice and intact. Also make sure that your gathers are nice and even at this point, so adjust if you need to and hold it tight and firm and stitch it all the way from end to end. Once you've locked your stitch, let's move on to prepping the comb. Cut out a 2.5 centimeters wide and 30 centimeters long fabric from the scrap tool that's left over and wrap around the comb like so. So you're just going through each section of the comb and wrapping it maybe twice or 3 times. Here you have to make sure that you don't stretch the tulle fabric as much, and you need to make sure that you're not making it too thick, but also not too thin. We need this so that we can stitch the veil to the comb and it stays nice and intact and doesn't come apart or anything, and it needs to look neat as well. So don't make it too bulky, just make sure that you cover it nice and even. Once you have covered the ends as well, make sure you glue it down with a fabric glue. Don't use too much glue, just a little bit to hold the edges. Next, you need to make sure that your edges meet nicely of all the layers. So I have the casing, the gathered fabric and the comb together, and this is how you need to place it. Now I will go ahead and trim down the excess gathered fabric because I don't want my veil to be very bulky. So I will just trim it all down. This will give me a very high-end quality and a very good finish. You also need to be careful that you don't cut into the casing fabric. So you make sure you just have the gathered fabric and you're trimming down all the gathered fabric. Once you've evenly cut this gathered fabric, we will then move on to the casing. We will also cut the length of the casing fabric as well, but we will leave enough to ensure that we can cover the gathered fabric of the veil. Once everything is cut and nice and even, we will then fold the casing fabric like so 2 times. So fold once and then fold over again, leaving out the gathered threads. I have not cut the threads yet, and you want to make sure that you leave it to end. First, we need to make sure that we are stitching the fabric, the veil onto the comb nicely. So make sure that your casing is folded twice, and then you would need to start stitching. Using a nylon thread is a must because it will give you a cleaner finish. Double knot your thread and then start stitching. So begin by double knotting your fabric and your comb together, and you put your needle through the bottom, the top of the comb where the stitch is, pass it through, and then you take it onto the next section at the bottom of the comb and pass it through, and you repeat this process until the whole thing is finished. You're making sure that the needle passes after the stitch of the veil. So where you have stitched the casing and the veil together, your hand stitching needs to go through under that machine stitch. That way you're making sure that the machine stitch is not going to be visible through your comb or when you're wearing it. So push it all under the casing and then pass through your needle from under the stitch through the veil and then through the comb as well, and then you repeat this process until the whole veil is stitched onto the comb. When you reach the end of your sewing, you need to make sure that you go all the way through the end section of the comb and stitch every bit of it, And then you double knot all the layers together with the comb as well, and make sure that it all lines perfectly. After the stitching is done and the knotting is done, we are going to go ahead and cut all the extra threads that we have, the gathering one, the stitching one, and the transparent nylon one as well. But make sure that you do that meticulously, because you don't want to snag the fabric, because tulle is a very delicate fabric. So make sure when you're cutting the threads, you're extra careful. And once that is done, your veil is almost ready. The last step would be to rearrange all your gathered tulle like so. And after this stage, you will need to steam iron this step here. You need to steam iron it, and once you steam iron this, the veil is sure to drape beautifully from your bun or your hairstyle.